Yes.
Can be used. You recognize that it's up to you. It's only you that can be used. If you're waiting for somebody else or something else to do it, it's not going to happen. If you're waiting for some big man with a white beard to come down and save the world, it's not going to happen. You are the saviors of the world. That's why you're here. Yes, yes. Yes, yes. Well, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center.
Good morning.
How's everybody feeling? Beautiful, beautiful. It's good to see your faces and your smiles and feel the energy in the room. So we're focusing on joy this month. We're Awake Alive, 30 Days of Joy. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing with us what the series is all about. Now, last week we came from the topic, what the hell are you talking about? And what we looked at, we talked about hell and recognized that hell is not a real place, but it's a real experience. And we create hell by the things that we talk about, by the things that we focus on. And when we recognize that we are vibrational beings, we have the possibility to vibrate where we want to vibrate. But many times we're talking about the hell of our lives. We're talking about the hell and creating hell when we're complaining about what our spouses or our partners are doing. We're talking about the hell and creating hell in our lives when we're talking about how much we don't like our job or we don't like our career or something is wrong here and something is wrong there. And of course, what we give our energy and attention to continues to grow. Just because we say we don't like it, that's not going to change it because we're putting our attention on it. But when we put our attention somewhere else and talk about the things that we desire, we start to talk about life as we would desire it to be, well then we create heaven. So I was thinking, as I was preparing for this week's message, I was reminded of the song I Smile by Kirk Franklin, which I'm sure some of you know. It's a cool song, really positive song. And there's something he says at the end of the song, when he's talking, and he says that I don't want you to be happy because that means you have to have something happening. I want you to have joy because that can't be taken away. And I absolutely love that. That is a brilliant thought because, again, when we look at happiness, happiness many times feels fleeting to us because we're usually looking for something or someone to make us happy. But that can change from time to time, yes, yes. And so what we've come to find is that really unconditional happiness is joy, and that's really what we're after because joy cannot be taken away. Joy, it doesn't matter if it's raining or if the sun is out. Joy, it doesn't matter if your kids are acting right or they're not acting right. Joy, it doesn't matter if you have a job or you don't have a job. Joy, it doesn't matter whether you have thousands or millions in the bank or whether you only have $5 in the bank. Those things can't change joy. But the question comes in, well, how do we get to joy? And recognizing that happiness and just being happy can be fleeting, how do we move beyond just happiness and going after happiness? So I thought something was very interesting. We watched a movie, Pastor Yolanda and I, this week, called Happy, which came out a few years ago, and it's really great. We'll post a link to it because I really think it's a great movie to watch as we're talking about going for joy this week. This month rather, 30 Days of Joy. A lot of great research is being done around happiness now. And one of the things that was interesting to me, they talked about the Declaration of Independence. And something that I just never saw before that's staring right in front of our faces is the fact that we've been taught that happiness is something outside of us, and we've been taught that happiness is something that we have to reach for and we may not get it. Now, in the Declaration of Independence, we know the Declaration of Independence, and it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, what's interesting about that, it sets up this idea that by virtue of our birth, we have certain rights. We have the right to life. We have the right to liberty. But we only have the right to pursue happiness. You see that? This has been set up in our minds that actually happiness is not something that's guaranteed, right? Even though it actually is guaranteed by God. That even joy, we go beyond happiness, that it's not guaranteed. We only have the right to pursue it, which then sets up this belief. It sets up this idea that we're going to spend the rest of our lives pursuing happiness. And that means it's always outside of us. That means it's not in our control. That means that it can run away from us. So then a question came to my mind, and this may seem like I'm taking a wrong turn here, but I have a question for you all. How many people in this room would like to be independently wealthy? Okay. Now, Now, I just want to share a definition of what independently wealthy is, just in case, you're not sure if you want to be independently wealthy. The working definition says that to be independently wealthy means that you are possessing enough wealth that one does not need financial support from another person and does not require income from employment. So again, I ask, how many people want to be independently wealthy? Possessing enough wealth that one does not need financial support from another person and does not require income from employment. Powerful, right? We would all like to be independently wealthy. And so then I began to ask myself a question. The thought came and said, well, what would it be like to be independently happy? And I have a working definition for that. To be independently happy is one who is possessing enough happiness that one does not need happiness support from another person and does not require happiness deposits from material things. How many people would like to be independently happy? Possessing enough happiness that you do not need happiness support from another person and does not require happiness deposits from material things. And what I want to offer you today is that happiness is actually our responsibility. You can be independently happy now. And what I also understand is that becoming independently happy is actually the key to experiencing joy, because we're not going to stop at just being happy. We actually want to live in joy, because again, as my brother Kirk Franklin said, I don't want you to just be happy, because that means you got to have something happen in. I want you to have joy, because joy cannot be taken away. So when we understand that happiness is our responsibility, then we have to look at this whole scenario a little deeper, because what I find is that we make other people responsible for our happiness, right? Mm-hmm. But at any point that you have said, someone did this and therefore I am not happy, you have stepped into the role of a victim. Because you're saying that someone has done something to me, that someone or something outside of me has shifted or changed my life. But what I recognize, as I talked about the Declaration of Independence, that we've been set up with this idea that we pursue happiness. I also recognize that we've been set up with this idea that being independently happy is not really the way the world works. Why do I say that? Well, because I believe that we're taught dependent happiness from an early age. As children, we find the ways to make mommy and daddy happy. We learn very quickly, oh, if I do this, mom and dad smile, they're happy. But if I do this other thing, then they're not happy and my life isn't good. So I need to do the things that please them. And then we go to school, and it's the same thing. We learn dependent happiness. We go to our churches, same thing. Okay, if I follow these rules and do these things and say yes and amen in this way, or whatever you have to say, right, then everybody's happy. We learn dependent happiness. We're taught that we must act a certain way. We're taught that we must follow certain rules. We're taught that we must be nice. We're taught that we must be good. And so then as we become adults pursuing happiness, we set up the same relationships when we're dating. Yes, yes? Because that's the way life worked. And so, well, you know what? I had to please all of the elders in my life. And so now I'm looking for you, ma'am, I'm looking for you, sir, to please me. Right? Or we can go out to a restaurant. We expect the person who is serving us to make us happy. If they don't do what they're supposed to do, then I'm mad. But what I understand is in that dependent area of happiness and the way that life has worked, we've forgotten something and lost sight of something, that freedom is the basis of our experience. It absolutely robs us of freedom. It actually robs us of actually becoming to know and understand who and what we are, and then being able to live from that place. Now, what I find is interesting as I look around this room, I see those of you who have decided to take your freedom. You know, you may have had situations and circumstances in your lives as you grew up. Maybe somebody said, oh, you need to marry this person, or you need to live here, or you need to stay here, or, you know, this is just good enough for you. A person of your stature or your background, this is good enough for you. But as I look around the room, I see people who have broken out of that mold, and you said, no, because that's not who I am. No. I recognize that happiness is my responsibility, and I am going to live my happiness, not pursue it anymore. Because I recognize I don't have to go outside for it. I'm going to live my happiness and make choices that resonate with who and what I really am. Mother, father, teacher, elders, I love you, I bless you. Thank you for being my caretakers. But the source within me is guiding me.
Yes.
The power of God within me, the life, the dream, the vision that God is within me, that's the thing that's guiding me now, and I must listen to that voice. It doesn't mean that I don't love you. It doesn't mean that I don't honor you. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the way you have chosen to live, and I bless the way that you live. I bless the God in you that is calling you forward to live the way that you choose to live. But I must live my happiness. And so then the question comes, well, if we understand this idea, because it seems touchy, right? Are you saying kids shouldn't listen to their parents? Are you saying that we shouldn't listen to our teachers or those that have responsibility for us? How can I maintain my happiness when bad things are happening? Pastor Greg, there's bad things happening in the world, and you're saying that, okay, if I let those bad things shift my own individual happiness, then I'm sort of standing in the place of a victim. But there's some terrible things happening, and if I'm a parent, my kids are acting up. They're acting up. You're telling me to just stay happy no matter what. How do I do that? Or even deeper, my employer, they've wronged me. They've done something wrong to me, or my partner cheated on me. That's wrong, isn't it, Pastor Greg? How do I remain happy? And so what I submit to you is that happiness absolutely does not have to be conditional. It doesn't have to be dependent. I go back again. We've learned this idea of dependency, and so we think that that's the way it works. But I'm offering another scenario, a new equation. Because, again, when we look at conditional happiness, what we are really saying to our partners or to our kids or to our employers, we're saying that when you do what I like, I'm happy. When you do what I don't like, I'm not happy. Another way of saying this is, when I can control you, I'm happy. Mm-hmm. When I can't control you, I'm not happy. And see, that vibration, that energy is problematic. Because, and again, it's so interesting because we've learned this way of living, but how many people have succeeded in controlling another human being? Like, does it work? Nope. Does it work? I mean, we can even look throughout history, even if we look on a global scale and we look at political figures and rulers who have tried to control people, and yes, they may have maintained control for 100 years or 200 years, they always lose control, right? Every major power, every great empire throughout the history of the earth has always fallen. You cannot control human beings, but yet we keep trying. We keep trying. Why? Because freedom is the basis of our experience. That's why it never works. And so what's absolutely necessary in every relationship, in every encounter, we must remind ourselves that I can't control this human being. I can only control myself. And what I'm interested in for myself is to live from happiness, to live in happiness, and to live in a place of joy. Now, the other reason why this thing about control is very important is, I talked about last week this idea that we live in an inclusive universe. And so, at the point that you're saying, okay, my child is not doing what I want my child to do. They know they're supposed to do their homework, and they're not doing their homework, and I'm angry about it, and so I'm focusing on what they're not doing. The universe only says, and I say this all the time, yes and amen. Wherever your focus is, it says yes to it. It doesn't care if you don't want it. It sees you looking at it. Okay? Now, a similar example, as I spoke to last week, is if you consider looking at a radio station or a radio frequency. If you're on Hot 97 listening to hip-hop, but you really want to listen to country western, you can't just say, oh, well, I really want to listen to country western, and you're still turned to Hot 97. You have to turn the dial. You have to make a shift within yourself. And so, when we understand the inclusive universe, and when we think about those things that we wish we could control, we must understand that everything that we push against persists. This is why there are still the war on drugs. This is why we're still combating sexism. This is why we're still combating racism and prejudice, because we keep putting all of our focus and attention on it. Now, it's been said, although it's never been verified, but people say it all the time, that when Mother Teresa was asked to attend an anti-war rally during the time of the Vietnam War, she said, I won't go. And it seems absurd, like, Mother Teresa, you don't like war. We know you don't like war. Like, why wouldn't you go to an anti-war rally? She said, I won't go to an anti-anything, but call me for a pro-peace rally. Because that's where the focus, that's where the energy is, right? That's where the power is. And this is that interesting conversation between power versus force. Love is power. But the forceful way would say, oh, I got to push against this thing. I got to push against this thing. But when you push against something, all of that force comes back to you and pushes back against you. And pushes back again. But the powerful thing says, the powerful way of being says that, okay, I recognize that I am a powerful being. I recognize that I'm a vibrational being. I recognize that where I put my attention on, that thing continues to grow and gains momentum. As I recognize that, what is it that I really want? To say, if I look at sexism and say, it's wrong for women to be treated this way, and women, the salaries for women should be equal to men, and we're fighting against all that. But what about if I just put my focus on creating equality? If we put all of our energy there, I don't have to fight against those who are still living in an ignorant past. I can put all of my attention on those who already see the truth, and we begin to build a coalition around that. And then what begins to happen is the energy of those who still are living in an antiquated way of being, their energy dissipates. They become relics of an old past. Nobody pays any attention to them. They're silly. But we have to put our attention on what we want rather than putting the attention on what we don't want, because when we do that, we're only giving it more energy. We're only giving it more attention. But again, the idea is like, okay, Pastor Grant, I hear you, but what they're doing is wrong. Or what my partner did is wrong. Or what my coworker did when she lied on me and threw me under the bus was wrong. Right? And so then I have the question for you, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? Because this is where it comes. See, we're talking about 30 days of joy. We're talking about focusing on joy. If you want joy in your life, again, it's like the radio station. You can't tune to the station of joy and tune to the station of she did X, Y, Z to me. Then you can't. It's impossible. So you have to make a choice. And it's okay. It's your choice. If you want to listen to the radio station of this person wronged me and the world is bad and people are being wrong, if you want to do that, you can. And I would just ask you, how's that working out for you? Right? But if you've made a decision, even as we're saying for these 30 days, if you've made a decision for joy, then you have to turn your vibrational radio, your personal antenna, to the frequency of joy, which means you can't allow that other thing in your space. And so that means that joy means letting no thing block it, not even being right. Because being right, it only gives you something for the moment. It only gives you something for the moment. I was just talking about this the other day, and I believe I've shared it here, but at the time that I was going through my divorce, that's where I was standing in. I was right. I was right, and I would tell everybody my story and get people on my side about how right I was. But I was also terribly unhappy. If you look at some of the pictures, Pastor Yolanda says it all the time. She's like, that doesn't even look like you. Right? My money was terrible. I was making a lot of money, but it was just never there. Just the opportunities that I wanted. I was pursuing my career, and I was working on an album. I recorded the whole album, and the hard drive got fried, and I lost all the music. I just couldn't get an opportunity. It just felt like doors were closing all the time. But when I stepped in that place of forgiveness, when I started doing that work, when I started saying each and every morning, God teaches me to love Erica as I love our daughter Malcolm. I'm going to stand in that vibration, to take my attention off of what happened in the past or who was right or who was wrong, and begin to move to that place of joy, because joy was the only thing that I cared about. I wasn't interested in living that closed life anymore. I wasn't interested in living that blocked off life anymore. Everything opened up in my life. The money came. My album was recorded and produced. I got a new manager. All of these things began to happen as I let go of that old story. I got off of that other radio signal so that I could hear all of this great new music in life. It's really that simple, but you have to make a choice. And again, the ego is that thing that creeps up and says, yeah, but you're right. Don't you want to be right? Well, what are other people going to think of you? Because they know that person wronged you, and now you are running around, skipping around, talking about joy. Don't you remember she lied on you? Don't you remember he said that, he did this. Don't you remember how bad things are in this country or that country or uptown or downtown? But I promise you, if you try it, just for these 30 days, just keep your attention on joy, no matter what. And you make the choice. You say to the ego, say to your ego, I'm going to give you a break for 30 days. For the month of June, I'm going to give you a break. You don't even have to worry. If things don't work out at the end of June, I'll pick you back up again. But just for 30 days, I'm going to focus on joy. And what I know to be true is that once you've done it, it feels too good to let it go. Once you've found it, it feels too good to let it go. It's like hearing your favorite song. Like once you hear a song and you just fall in love with it, and you can just listen to it over and over and over again, and it just brings you something. It takes you somewhere every single time. Years can go by, but you play that song, whatever it is for you, and it takes you to that place. And so you're not willing to let go of it. But again, I understand that it's hard. I understand that it can be difficult. It's a new way of being. And there was an example from the teaching of Abraham-Hicks that I love in the book Ask It and It's Given, to sort of create a comparison of how you can begin to live your life. And so imagine you were a chef and you want to create an apple pie. And you've been taken, they take you into this restaurant, every ingredient possible is in this amazing kitchen. Your goal is to make an apple pie. So of course you have your apples and your flour and your sugar, and all the things, cinnamon, all the things you need, some butter, I'm sure, some vanilla, right? All the things you would need to make a great apple pie. But again, now this is a fabulous kitchen, so it has other things, right? It has soy sauce and garlic, right? And all of these other ingredients, and oregano and hot peppers, right? Now none of these things go in an apple pie, yes? But they're there. But you're not worried about the fact that those things are there because you're focused on what you want to create. You know exactly what you want to create and the ingredients that go in the pie that you're choosing to make. So it doesn't matter that there's soy sauce over there. It doesn't matter that there's garlic and hot peppers and all these other things that have nothing to do about your pie, that have nothing to do about your life. Because that's the thing, the pie is your life. Stop worrying about what's going on in somebody else's world. They're over there making their pie. They're over there doing what they need to do to take the ingredients that they need to make whatever it is that they're choosing to bake in their lives. Good or bad, it's their choice. But what you're interested in is your joy. What you're interested in is living happiness. And so you begin to make that your only focus. That is your responsibility, our only responsibility. Now, one of the other beautiful thoughts that comes from Abraham-Hicks that I love, and this is a tool that you can use right now. It only takes 17 seconds to shift an emotion or feeling when you catch it at the beginning. Because see, many times, and maybe it's just me, this was a lesson I had to learn, that I used to hold it all in, right? So something would happen, I didn't like it, and I wouldn't say anything about it. Why? Because I wanted to keep peace. Nobody wants to have arguments and talk about all this stuff. And then it's like, well, maybe you're just a crybaby. Maybe just everything just is bad to you. Man up, blah, 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 right? So I wouldn't say anything. And then weeks, months would go by. Something else would happen. I don't say anything. Then something else happens. I don't say anything. Then something really little happens and I blow up. And it's like, dude, what's wrong with you? All I did was ... But in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but you did this, and you did this, and then last month you said this, and the other week you did this, right? It only takes 17 seconds to shift a negative emotion, and I say that in quotes. An emotion that doesn't feel good, whatever it is, it doesn't feel good in your life. When you catch it at the beginning, and it will dissipate, and you can go back to joy. It's the instant of if you were baking an apple pie, we'll go back to that example, and you were sort of trying to figure out what your ingredients are, and you're looking at this one ingredient, and you consider it, and you're like, no, I don't want that. And you move back to what you're doing. This emotion shows up. Emotions show up. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. The thing I love about it, they're indicators. It's like we're a temperature gauge, right? And so our emotions are showing us whatever the temperature is in our life, good or bad, positive or negative, wanted or unwanted. And so, the temperature in this room, if it's 80 degrees in this room, there's no reason for us to lose our minds And so then we make certain choices. Either we change what we're wearing so we're cooler, or we turn on the AC, or turn on a fan, or leave the space. There's a lot of different things we can do, but we don't lose our minds over what the temperature is saying. We recognize that it's an indicator. It's showing us something. This is what our emotions do. Our emotions are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things, because they show us exactly where we are. They show us exactly how much or how little we are aligned with the truth of our being, with our inner being. When life feels good, when you feel good within yourself, when you feel that sense of joy and appreciation and gratitude, and life just seems to be flowing, you know that you're aligned with your source. You know you're aligned with who you really are. But when you start to feel anger and fear and worry and doubt and stress and depression and overwhelmed, then you know, just like the temperature gauge is saying, oh, okay, here's an indicator. I'm reading the temperature. Now let me make a choice. What do I need to do to move my temperature back to whatever I desire? Because if you enjoy being overwhelmed, then so it is. It's beautiful, right? If you enjoy being stressed, beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it. Just like the temperature gauge, there's nothing inherently wrong about 30 degrees. Some people absolutely love that. There's nothing inherently wrong about 90 degrees. Some people love that. So it's the same thing with our emotions, and this is why I say our emotions are beautiful. We don't judge anger, because anger shows us where we are. And then you can decide to live from that place, or you can recognize that, okay, from anger I can move up to resentment. And from resentment I can move up to irritation. And from irritation I can move to slightly annoyed. And from slightly annoyed I might move up to a little bit of hope. From hope, I can start to find myself moving into possibility. And from possibility, I start to find myself moving into love. From love, I find myself moving into joy. So that's why our emotions are beautiful, because they allow us to move up and down the scale and show us exactly where we are. Last point. Pastor Yolanda and I were talking about this a couple weekends ago, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things we can do as we interact with each other. At times it can feel difficult, but I recognize that it really is the thing for me, and it's one of the things that I'm constantly working on. We talk a lot about the now. We sing, I am here now, every Sunday. We sang today, let us live in the now, holy, holy, and brand new. Look at me, look at you, holy, holy, and brand new. And what I began to understand is that one of the things that we must do, we understand that every moment is a new moment. Every now moment is a new moment, is a new opportunity, and every day is a new opportunity. The past is gone. It literally does not exist except if we conjure it up in our minds. That's the only place it can exist. And what I find is that so often in our relationships, whatever it may be, intimate relationships, parent-child relationships, teacher-child relationships, or employer-employee, we're always looking at each other from the past. Holding each other to that past, holding whatever it was, whatever it may be, and then we eliminate the possibility for any difference to happen in our lives and in their lives. And so one of the key things that we must do if we are choosing to live independently happy, as we are choosing to live in joy and to create joy in our lives, we must learn to see everything from the now. Recognize that this is a brand new moment. I don't know anything about this moment. I've never been here. How can I put all that other stuff from yesterday into here, which has never existed? This is brand new. We understand that for material things. If I have the new iPhone 6 is coming out later on this year. When I have an iPhone 6, right, I don't know anything about that device, so I got to check it out and see what the new features are. And I treat it as something new. I can't treat it like the 2 or 3 versions ago and try to make it do what it did then. I'm like, I don't know anything about this, and that's the excitement of it. We do that with material things, but how often do we do that with each other? How often do we do that with ourselves? Oh my God. Many times we still see ourselves from our 6-year-old self. A mistake that we made at 5, at 6, at 7, or something we were involved in as children that had nothing to do with us, and then we continue to see ourselves from that place. You are brand new now. Which means that none of that exists. And also, none of anything that you project in the future exists. There's only now. And so we can learn to see ourselves from the now. We can learn to see our partners and our children. We can learn to see our employers, our employees from the now. It's a beautiful thing. I recognize that it can be difficult sometimes. So maybe you start with yourself. Because one of the things I love in A Course in Miracles, it often brings us back to this idea that as we give, we receive. And so, as I'm giving to myself, I'm giving to all of my brothers and sisters. Practice with yourself, right? And as you begin to learn to see yourself in the now, giving yourself a new opportunity, it doesn't matter. Yes, we all make mistakes. Yes, we make errors in judgment. Yes, there are times when we get hot-headed and we say something that we wish we hadn't said, but it exists in the past now. And today, right here, right now in this moment, you are holy, holy, and brand new. Look at me, look at you. We're holy, holy, and brand new now. And so that is why we come back to the now over and over and over and over again. So how do we know we're successful with this? Right? How do we know that we've successfully accomplished this wonderful definition of being independently happy, possessing enough happiness that one does not need happiness support from another person and does not require happiness deposits from material things? Well, the way we know we're successful is to look at the joy in our lives. If you're experiencing joy, you got it. That's it. It's not the material things, right? Because we think that. It's like, oh yeah, I'm happy now because, I have a 5-floor brownstone and I'm driving this car and X amount of dollars a day. I'm happy now. It's not true. It doesn't work. And there are enough people on this earth. I remember hearing an interview with Jim Carrey who talked about that. At one time, he was the highest paid actor. And he said, I really wish I could give everybody the gift of having millions of dollars in order to really understand that this is not it. Like, money does not buy you happiness. It doesn't change anything. If you don't know who and what you are within yourself, if you don't recognize that happiness is your responsibility, and no house, no car, no woman, no man, no status can give you that sense of joy and happiness, then you've lost it. It doesn't matter how many millions in the bank. And so that's why Kirk Franklin says, I don't want you to be happy. It means you got to have something happen. I want you to have joy, because nobody can take that away. And so I leave you with this from Abraham-Hicks. Tell everyone you know, my happiness depends on me, so you're off the hook. And then demonstrate it. Be happy no matter what they're doing. Practice feeling good no matter what. And before you know it, you will not give anyone else responsibility for the way you feel. And then you'll love them all. Because the only reason you don't love them is because you're using them as an excuse not to feel good. Let's be independently happy, y'all. Let's stand. Independently happy. Independently happy. God, you are our mother. You are our father. And I call you mother and father because I recognize that you are the source of all that is. And as you are the source of all that is, I recognize that all that is you is all that is me. As I recognize that all that is me is all that is you, I know that it's not just about me, but every single person in this room and within the sound of my voice is also one with you. The source that you are their mother, you are their father, you are their creator, and the life, the love, the strength, the joy, the courage, the peace, the bliss that you are is dwelling in and as them now. And so as we are interested now in no longer pursuing happiness, we are interested now in living joy. We tap into that wellspring of joy that lives within us. We tap into that unending well of joy that lives within us, and we let it flow, we let it flow, we let it flow. Because we recognize that it is nothing that we have to earn. We recognize that it is nothing that we have to be good enough for. We recognize that it is nothing that we have to follow a certain amount of rules or take a test to experience. We recognize that it is in us now wherever we move, wherever we go, wherever we are being, whatever we are in, the joy is there. And so we turn our attention away from the stories. We turn our attention away from who did what or who didn't do what. We change our attention away from what I did or what I did not do. We turn our attention away from what is happening in someone else's backyard, and we put our attention solely on what is happening within our lives. We are choosing today to mind and manage our own vibrations, because we recognize as we focus on our vibration, as we focus on our feeling good, as we focus on what our temperature gauge is showing us, we can move into into a profound and amazing experience of joy unlike we have ever experienced before. We are making a choice that for these 30 days we are going to live in joy and choose joy no matter what. We are going to be aware that joy is here. We are going to be awake to the possibility of joy, and we are going to be alive, living in absolute unconditional joy. I am grateful and thankful for these powerful spiritual beings that are here in the room, the vibrational beings that are here in this space and within the sound of my voice, because I know that as we all turn our dial to joy, this world that we create will be absolutely amazing. I'm not worried about the wrongs and the ills and the isms that are taking place in this world, because I know if we focus on love and only love, I know if we focus on peace and only peace, that is what we shall see and experience. So we put our focus on possibility. We know that all things are possible. And we know today that joy is possible as we live, as we move, and as we breathe on this earth. So we release these words. We release these words in absolute love, joy, and appreciation. We say yes to the joy that is rushing to us now. We say yes to the unconditional happiness and peace that is rushing to us now. And we let it be experienced as our lives. And as we experience it, it must be experienced in everyone's life all around us. For this we are so very grateful. We say amen, Ashe, and so it is.